my name is Vince. I'm a member of the MINT community. So MINT stands for Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. So the MINT community is the people who are actually taking this concept of motivational interviewing, which is the most evidence-based approach we have, specifically in working in like healthcare settings, helping people to make behavior changes. And so this MINT community is out there in the world training tens and even hundreds of thousands of people in motivational interviewing skills. My focus at MINT is I do motivational interviewing training with environmental interested people, a lot of environmentalists, people like yourselves. And I've been doing MI training for about 5 years. So from now on, if I say MI, that's motivational interviewing. So we all just call it MI. I'm even known as the MI guy. So, I'm actually from Toronto. And the way that I actually got connected with you was I actually did training with Citizens Climate Lobby Toronto. And I did a series of those, and then they asked me to actually do the training at their national conference. So we did a deeper dive session, and right before they went and did their lobby day in Ottawa, in the capital here of Canada. And shortly after that lobby session, a week after that session, Canada became the entered into the global community as somebody who's passed a carbon fee and dividend at the national level. So we got, what we wanted. I mean, there was of course weaknesses, but it was there. So motivational interviewing is very effective, and I really am excited to share some of it with you today. So let's actually turn our focus on what can we accomplish in the next 90 minutes, a little bit less. So am I going to be able to teach you to be expert motivational interviewers in 90 minutes? The answer to that is a resounding no. It's not going to happen. What I can do is I can give you a little bit of a base work. So what is motivational interviewing? Give you a little bit of a intellectual sense of what it is, and give you what I've found to be the best way for you to emotionally align in sort of like what I like to refer to as accidentally doing motivational interviewing. And I actually developed this when I was actually helping the Green Party of Canada to use motivational interviewing in their door canvassing. So we didn't have a lot of time to bring people up to speed in MI. So I had to come up with how can I get people to do something closer to motivational interviewing a heck of a lot faster. So that's where this was born. Because realistically, we've all kind of done motivational interviewing already. We just have to figure out when we've done it and how to bring that up out of ourselves. So I'm not going to so much as teach you, but help you to realize that you already know how to do motivational interviewing. Okay, so for that, I'd like us to actually do a little quick exercise just to kind of get us warmed up and get us into the space and really like hone something special. So for this, we're not going to go there yet, but we're all going to go to breakout rooms. And the breakout rooms will be pairs. So just 2 people in each breakout room. And we're going to do a 2-way exercise. So one way and then the other way. And we'll spend about 10 minutes in the breakout room. We'll go 4 minutes one direction, 4 minutes the other direction. And we got 2 minutes of fudge time because usually things happen. So what are we going to do when we go into these breakout rooms? The first thing I'd like, does everybody have something, let's say, to write with in front of them? Maybe a little sheet of scrap paper as well? Okay, so I'd like everybody to write down something that you've considered making a change on, but for whatever reason, you just haven't actually like done it yet. You're like, you kind of, I probably should do that. Oh yeah, well, yeah. Oh, so something kind of like that. That thing that your relative nags you about. Now, this thing that you're writing down, this should be something that you feel comfortable talking with a stranger. So maybe not something overly personal. So it looks like we've got about 70% ready, 90%. I like to sometimes take pauses. So if you ever see me silent, it's because I love silence. Okay, so okay, so we've got that. And now there's one other thing that I need to do here, which is we're going to basically be priming a state of curiosity. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to go into these rooms and we're going to be as curious as we can. One of us will be interviewing the other person on the topic that they wrote down on that sheet of paper. So if I'm like I'm Vince, there's Wolfram. So if Wolfram and I are in a group, then I'll say, okay, so Wolfram, what was your thing? And then he like tells me, and then I proceed to have a conversation with Wolfram about that topic. Now, what I want everybody to do is during this interaction, I want you to be as curious as possible. What I'd like you to do is I'd like everybody to look at other people in this thing. So like, even if you aren't like having your video on, you can still see the other people in the room. I want you to look at anybody but yourself. And I want you to look at these people and I want you to say, wow, look at all of these people. They just wrote something down that is really important to them. I'm feeling curious. I want to know, what is that thing that they wrote down? How does that define who they are as a person? Where might they be going in the future as a result of me knowing that this is what they wrote down? How does that tell me about who they were in the past? I can also picture like a little cat digging around in a box and saying, oh, what's over there? The cat is curious. It wants to know, oh, there's a new thing in my environment. We're feeling that feeling of curiosity, and we're directing that feeling of curiosity towards our partner. So when we go out into our breakout rooms, then when we look at our partners and you say, I'm not sure what to say, as long as the thing that you say is based on curiosity, that's the thing to say. And let's go to our breakout rooms and have a 4-minute conversation to raise. So Gabriella just like spoke a little bit about like what I was doing. Okay, so she could hear and see what I was doing. Now you were doing a lot of this in your rooms as well. So I'm going to highlight what I like to refer to as sort of like the 4 sort of like things that have to happen kind of like in order for a motivational interview to really be happening. So for this, I have this little guide. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look up at this top corner here where it says, I feel. So I feel compassion, curiosity, and collaborative. Okay, and so from there, I listen to desire, ability, and reason. From listening, I move to, I say, evocative questions. Questions where it's not a yes, no. It's like something that's open-ended. And I do an affirmation, like with Gabriella. I was like, you're a good mom. So this is affirming something. She's already demonstrated this. You can see it. You can see it in her body language. You can see it in her intention. It was very clear, if you're looking at body language, that this is something that's true. I could genuinely say that. I could affirm that. And it was observed in our conversation. So I can affirm skills and strengths in my audience. I can reflect back what's being said. So when I offer a reflection, what I'm doing is I'm demonstrating a stronger level of understanding than can be derived in any other way. And ultimately, my tone is continually emphasizing autonomy. So that being that, like, so in the example, so I was interviewing Gabriella. So in that interview, we were looking at, Gabriella, will she run? Will she not? Now, the thing is I can't mind control Gabriella and get her to run. The only person who can choose to run is Gabriella. Like, if Gabriella says, I ain't running, then she ain't running. Like, that's it. End of the story. So there's no point in trying to force somebody to do something because you don't control their behavior. What you can do is you can emphasize autonomy and help them to stop getting in the way of themselves. So a lot of times people just don't feel like they have the power to actually make the move on their own. So by emphasizing autonomy and saying, you have the power to decide how to deal with this. Even though it would be true regardless of whether you said it or not, the explicit statement of it actually empowers the person and strengthens them in an incredibly great way. So once again, I want you to look at the other people in the room and realize that the other people in this room are among the most environmentally interested, like the biggest environmental advocates, like the people who are going to fight tooth and nail. All of those types of people are the people that you're looking at right now. They're here. Every single person here is pretty much, even just by being here, you're in the 90th percentile or higher on your environmental leadership. Now, also look around and realize that we all know enough about environmental science and climate change science and sustainability. We know enough to give all of our countries clinical depression. We could bury you in so much science that you'll be depressed for the rest of your life. Okay, so now, are we actually going to, by burying the people we speak to under a mountain of climate science, are we going to get them to change their behavior? So if we look at motivational interviewing, the answer to that, and what we all kind of know in our gut, is that the answer is no. When we look at this right here is based off of something called the MITI code, MITI code. So what is the MITI code? So the MITI code is a language coding system where there's like a clinical psychologist, and that clinical psychologist is having an interaction with a client on pretty much any topic at this point. Motivational interviewing has been proven in laboratory studies across literally thousands of different behaviors, and been effective in every single one of them. So, so in this, just by recording the language of the interviewer and using this language coding system to parse out and code the effectiveness of the person doing this motivational interviewer, just with that data, you can predict the likelihood of the other person to make a change. So that's really what motivational interviewing science is. It's what do I do, what do I say, and how do I feel? And when I feel, listen, say, and do those things, then my audience is more likely to make a change. So I'm not controlling their behavior. I'm only controlling my own behavior to be in alignment with the evidence-based approach for the way to make myself most likely to result in the other person making a change. That's what motivational interviewing is. So when we look at the Mighty Code and look at that parsing system, we can actually break down what are the types of statements that make people more or less likely to make a change based on what we do. So these things up at the top here, persuade and confront. Persuade and confront make our audience less likely to make a change. So if we attempt to persuade somebody, then we will actually engage psychological reactance from the person. They will become resistant to either the message or us or both. And that psychological reactance, regardless of whether the resistance is pointed at the argument that we made or at ourselves, regardless of where the resistance is pointed, once we cultivate resistance in the mind of our audience, they now become resistant to everything that we stand for and everything that we're connected with. So just by having the name CCL connected to our visit, if we actually persuade somebody and engage them in resisting what we've said, we've made them less likely to follow through with our, legislative objective. Now, these things in the middle are things that have no correlation towards either making people less likely or making people more likely. So they are persuade with permission, giving information, questions, and simple reflections. Okay, so I'm going to break down one of them specifically, which is give information. So we like to think that when we are actually sharing climate science, which is sometimes a lot of what we do, that we are actually just giving information. We're sharing information about, like, let's say this legislative objective. So that Vince guy, he's telling me, like, I can't, like, share that. Is that what he's saying? Actually, like, what I really want to point out here is looking at how give information can sometimes not be coded as give information. So there's give information here, and then there's persuade. Oftentimes, as environmentalists who are very passionate, when we give information in an emotional way that removes the autonomy of the other person to decide what to do with it. We're giving information specifically to compel instead of giving information to empower them to decide for themselves. Now that sounds like almost the exact same thing, but that slight nuance changes it from drawing out the resistance from the person or not. So like if I were to use a little bit of an example right now, so I'll just kind of interview myself. So Sally, if you want to do balcony gardening, the best way that you can do it is you can get like these planters that are like all season, and then like our planters you can actually bring in during the winter. So like you can do the balcony gardening while also being able to have like the basil that you're growing in the summer and the winter, because you can bring it in as well. Yeah, well, there's just really not enough space in the house. Like, I mean, like if I was going to do that, maybe I'd do it during the summer, but it's just going to get a lot of dirt in the house. And it's like, Okay, so that's just sort of like an interaction where you can see by providing like information in a way that is sort of like, it sounded like I wanted her to take on the behavior. So because I wanted her to take on the behavior, it kind of felt like I was compelling her to take on the behavior. And that specifically drew out a feeling of reactance, this resistance to the statement. And even though it wasn't like, no, I'm not doing that, it still was resistance. You could hear the resistance in her voice. She was like, yeah, like, I kind of, like, I know it's a point, but it's like, it's really kind of not for me. It's like, she's not going to do this. So in something like that, give information can turn into persuade. The thing that actually shifts that is our own emotional self-control. So what we just did in this previous exercise is we actually narrowed the amount of emotions that we were allowing ourselves to feel. So when we normally go into a conversation, we might feel any number of different things. We might feel happy, sad, angry, upset. We want them to change. They're not changing. Anger could be there. All sorts of different things could be there in our emotions. And then those emotions are going to change what we are saying. They're going to change our tone. And our tone changes everything about what we've said. An example I like to use with this is, oh, I like your hair. I like your hair. One is saying, I actually like your hair. The other one is saying, girl, time to get a cut. So that tone changed everything about it. The tone inverted the meaning of the statement. So when we allow ourselves to feel a wider band of emotions, our tone and our emotions are going to come through and they're going to be represented in the statement, and they're going to turn everything that we say into persuasion. Because let's be real, we are all here because we have a need for our legislators to actually pass meaningful climate legislation. That's why we're here. We have a need for that to happen. And then Vince comes along and says, I'm going to go ahead and need you to not need that. It's very, very difficult. So what we can do is we can use that sense of curiosity, that focus on autonomy, and realizing that only they can actually make the decision for themselves. And when we bring that into our interaction, that emotional self-control, then that empowers us to give information in a way that is not persuasive and empowering for them. I mean, they're the legislator. If they do it, let's give them credit. Let's give them the autonomy to do the thing that we want them to do. Okay, so then down at the bottom, so those are the things that are kind of neutral. So what are the things that are really good? Okay, so this is the meat and potatoes, affirmation. Okay, so affirming a skill. So anytime we affirm somebody's skillfulness, then it doesn't have to be specific to like anything to do with climate. It can be generic. It can be skillfulness, like I did, like when I was working with Gabriella, when we did our little curiosity thing, I said, you're a good mom. Like that right there was an affirmation, and it was genuine because when I was listening, I could listen deeper. I could listen much, much stronger into what she was saying. Okay, if a person says this, what type of person says that? And when you actually let your brain kind of spin on that, then you realize who this type of person is. If you listen with as much curiosity as you can, then you can listen more deeply and you can draw out things like skillfulness things that can be used to affirm their skillfulness back to them. Complex reflection, now that's basically just demonstrating like what they said, but in your own words. So you're sort of expressing understanding. So for this, I like to actually give an example. So do I have a volunteer for somebody who'd like to, I'm going to ask you a question about your hair. Hi there, Marlon.
Hello.
So yeah, can you tell me, like, why do you choose the hair that you choose?
Because I like it that way.
I understand. Okay, so did you sense that awkwardness? It was a sort of like, it almost felt like I didn't understand. Okay,
Yeah.
so then, so a reflection is different than that. So let's actually change this to something else. Okay, so Marilyn, why did you choose the short hoodie thing that you chose today?
Oh, because it's quite comfortable.
Okay, so like really, you're just basically you're working from home. It seems like, and just having something nice and cozy and comfy to put on was just quick and easy and nice.
That's correct, yes.
All right, so okay, so this statement that was more reflective, it demonstrated understanding. Okay, so it's like on the first one, it was sort of like, well, did he actually understand? I mean, he said, I understand, but I don't think so. But when I actually demonstrated understanding, then it's sort of like, oh, yeah, so he got my reason. Okay, so then, so that's what reflection is. Reflection is basically just listening to what they said and not parroting it back, because that would be like just sort of like the simple reflection. We want this complex reflection that goes a little bit deeper, right? So I listened not only to the words that Marilyn was saying, but I also listened to uh, other language cues and other signs from Marilyn's environment. I could see, it looks to me like Marilyn is in a home environment right now. And so there was additional context. Okay, so I know that comfort is something that's important, like in this home environment. But if I saw Marilyn like at a cafe, that maybe the hoodie would be there, maybe it wouldn't. I don't actually know. I'd have to be curious. And like maybe like when he goes out, it's always a suit. This next little bit is something that is it's one of the biggest things that holds people up from being able to actually engage and do the motivational interviewing like style of communication. Um, it's really cognitive load. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to say we have 4 brain spaces. Okay, so actually, I even start off a little bit differently. How many digits are in a phone number? Just hold up like finger numbers. How many digits? Okay, so 10, 10. Okay, so, depending on which country where you're at, there's slightly different numbers. Now, each one of these numbers has got it's got parentheses around things, it's got dashes in it, stuff like that. Okay, so why do we actually have extra parentheses, extra dashes, breaking up phone numbers and actually adding to the complexity of the phone number when the number could be shorter? And the reason why is because when we break up the numbers, we want to break the numbers up into smaller segments. If we kept everything lumped together, we make a lot more cognitive errors. And when we go to dial, the mistakes abound. Okay, so 4 is how many brain spaces we have. So now the thing is, motivational interviewing is a very difficult thing to do. And the thing that makes it difficult is because it requires all 4 of your brain spaces to be open. Okay, so when we're doing, what are we doing in a motivational interviewing? What is our brain doing? Well, we're using one brain space to really observe the body language setting surrounding. You just observed with Marilyn that I took in where he was sitting. That was part of it. Okay, I'm listening to the words that are being said. I'm also hearing the tone and interpreting the meaning of the tone. And I'm left with a tiny little pinky to integrate all of that together and figure out what the heck I'm going to say to that person. Okay, so observing setting, listening to tone, hearing the words, combining all that together and figuring out one little pinky's worth of space left to say, figure out what to say. Now, let's say you try to do motivational interviewing in the context that we're all going to be going for. We go and we speak to our elected representative. We've got our 4 brain spaces. but we go in with an agenda. We're going to go in trying to push the thing that we want. So that takes up one of our brain spaces. Oh, I'm going to convince him in this way. That's another brain space. Okay, so we've lost two of our brain spaces. We have lost the ability to do motivational interviewing. We can hear the words, but not the tone or the surrounding context. We can't actually get to the affirmation stage. We can't do any of that because all we can do is hear the words that they're saying, but not the deeper meaning. And we have to respond on only the words alone. So when we bring our agenda, which I want you to do your agenda. That's why I'm doing this for free. I'll do more free training for you guys as much as you want. I want your agenda. But when we go into that room, if we bring our agenda with us, we decrease the likelihood that we will get our agenda. So we have to be emotionally ready and prepared and going in with a mindset of, this is my agenda, but I may not get it. It's not up to me to get the agenda. It's up to them to decide whether they're going to do the agenda or not. They get to decide. So in motivational interviewing, what we do is we have to open up for all four of our brain spaces. And we already did the activity on how to do that. So if you think back to when you were in your breakout room and you were feeling curious, take a look at yourself and take a moment to pause and look back just 45 minutes ago when you were listening curiously and say to yourself, how much cognitive interference did you have? Now, some of you may have had more cognitive interference than others. And that, I think, really just kind of proves where I'm going. Like Wolfram, for example, was busy trying to curate everything here because he's a noble gentleman. He wants everybody to have a good experience. So he was focusing on, okay, well, have we sorted everybody? Oh, there's people coming back that, whatever, they're not getting where they need to go. I need to help them. I was worried about this other thing, so I didn't get to get my thing written down. And now I'm almost feeling like a sense of guilt because maybe I should have wrote that thing down, but when was I supposed to do that? And so could he do the activity? And the answer is a resounding no. No, he couldn't. There was no brain space left to do it. So when we feel curious, that is listening. So when people I don't know how this is not taught in schools, it's literally mind-boggling. So when people are I need you to listen more, let's take a look at what happens when you say, I need to listen more with the brain space view. Oh, I need to listen. I need to listen happening in my brain uses the brain space. I need to listen. Usually it comes with emotional burden and guilt because you probably missed something. That takes the brain space. I need to listen, and emotional guilt usually comes with I missed something and I need to go back and what was it that was said? Oh, I missed it. I've almost got it. So that uses a brain space. So they're talking. We have one pinky left to hear what they're saying right now while fetching what they said in the past and figuring out what their body language is doing. Literally, we need two brains worth of brain space to be able to do that. So when we engage our curiosity, we open up all four of our brain spaces. So if we can just look into ourselves and say, how do I listen? We all know how to do that at the maximum way, which is I just be curious. I'm just going to be curious. And when we do that, everything else in motivational interviewing, in my experience, becomes 70% more likely to just happen accidentally. You can't do a reflection if you didn't hear what they said. It's never going to happen. You didn't hear them. What are you reflecting back? You can't do it. So when we're curious, we hear it. We have the ability, at least, to reflect. So one of the biggest concerns that people have is we're concerned about getting resistance. So there's nothing that I can really say to really convince you that you're not going to get resistance, despite the fact that I really don't get much resistance. In 5 years of doing this and doing motivational interviewing interactions with thousands upon thousands of people, I've gotten resistance from about 3. But I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to kind of just get this for yourself. So normally I don't do role plays. But in this situation, I think we're going to do a role play. And the person who's role playing, I want you to just, if you are feeling like you want to be resistant, then be resistant. I'm going to ask one of the people in each group to actually take on the role of an elected representative. So the person who feels that they want to like do the character acting role, I want you to just picture an elected representative that you've met. And I want you to basically take a minute and I want you to kind of be that person. And I want you to be that person with the other people in your group. And that they will then like interview you, the elected representative, and you know that you're going to get some resistance. And what I want everybody who's interviewing the elected representative role player to do, I want you to do something that we refer to as rolling with resistance. So when you hear the resistance, I want you to not push against it with science. I want you to observe any sort of anxiety that appears in yourself, and I want you to just let it go and say, this is their truth. And instead, I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be curious to explore their resistance. And I'm going to find out what is behind their resistance. And I'm not going to attempt to persuade them at all. So I'm just going to explore their resistance with as much curiosity as I can. And I'm not going to judge them in any way. Okay, so any questions before we go? How was that for instructions? Okay, so you'll have to self-sort when you get there. So self-sort however you please. So then I'll just recap real quick. So in 1 minute, we're gonna separate out. So we've got one of you will choose to be the character actor, assuming the role of the elected representative. And 1 or 2 of you, the other part of the team, is gonna interview, and you're gonna use your curiosity to kind of roll with that resistance in a non-judgmental way, and you're not going to persuade them at all. And you, oh no, no science. Oh no, 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 no science.
What are they resisting? I mean, what are we doing?
Oh, yeah.
They're resisting.
So if you would like to just bring forward, like the elected representative will know that you're coming for a lobby meeting, and you're going to be bringing forward some form of legislative objective. Okay, let's go, Wolfram. I posed a very, very significant challenge to you. And so like, that's kind of like what I like to do in my trainings is, you know, I don't beat around a bush. I'm like, let's tackle the biggest things. Let's go for it. So now the thing is I already expressed that we're not actually going to get a lot of this, but we still have to unpack a little bit of this. Why? Because we think we're going to get it. Now, the easiest way to get resistance is the presentation of our arguments for change. Then it's a human natural reflex when we're being persuasive and making an argument for change for our audience to argue a reason against change. So when we bring up our arguments, the best arguments that we have, we're basically removing the best arguments that they have from being reasons for them to actually take a step forward. So we really can't bring up our best arguments because when we bring up our best arguments, we're effectively getting them to resist the best arguments. What we can do is we can draw out and evoke from them their best arguments. And that's what motivational interviewing is we're drawing out their best arguments for change. And hoping that that's enough. Now, what I can say is that this has the highest effectiveness of behavior change that we can achieve specifically in a very short session. So in literally 20 minutes or less, we can actually have a very effective motivational interview with evidence-based results in the direction towards behavior change. Now, what were we just doing here? When we're faced with somebody who's very resistant, what we really have to do is we have to change our goalpost. Okay, so many people that were in this room that were being role-played were role-playing conservative politicians. Not everybody, but some. So just getting this person to not be the co-sponsor of the Destroy the Environment bill is an incredible step forward. Just getting this person to not be a vocal minority or a vocal, just getting this person to not be vocally against whatever climate carbon pricing scheme is being put forward, that right there might very well be enough to just win the vote. Because like there has to be opposition for the vote to go down. If none of the conservatives are resisting, and well, let's be real, there's always going to be some resisting. But if the amount of people that are resisting, if that went down by 30%, how much easier is it to pass legislation? It's unbelievably easier. It's almost impossible to pass this legislation with their resistance. But just helping them, they don't even have to support, just helping them to not resist increases the likelihood and viability of this legislation so many times. And they do, right? Don't they trigger your resistance? And that's why, like with something like this, we have to find it in ourselves, find our own emotional regulation. We need to identify when they are resisting us and they're triggering our resistance. Because when they trigger our resistance, then like it's putting us into lizard brain. It's getting our cortisol to go up. It's getting our adrenaline going to go up. It's putting us into fight or flight response. How are we going to respond to them when we're in fight or flight? We are going to persuade them. We are going to confront them. If we allow ourselves to be put into any form of anxiety state, we have already lost the entire meeting. It's gone. So that's why I wanted to make this meeting about sort of like looking at ourselves and saying, how can we bring ourselves back to a place of emotional self-regulation in the face of something that's triggering for all of us because we care about it so much. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left before the conclusion. I know we can do some Q&A and stuff like that too. I definitely want to do some of that. What I do want to say is I'm very, very happy to continue to offer deeper training with people. There isn't a cost. I do this because I actually would like to have food when I'm older, because, we didn't destroy our ecosystems. So when you're like, well, I can't take something that's free, it's like, please take something that's free because I would like to be able to eat when I'm older. So if anybody here would like to organize a follow-up training, as recently as a month ago, I did a sequence of 4 2-hour trainings weekly. And at the end of the session of 4 trainings, they were really into it. They wanted more. And we ended up adding another 2 sessions so that we could like round out everything and give people the extra experience and practice that they wanted. So if anybody wants that, like I literally put my email address as my like little thing, and I'll type it again in the chat. And I would be happy to like do like a big session or like a smaller session or whatever. So anyway, so that's an offer, and please take me up on it. 1 session, 2 session, 4 session, whatever, don't care.